Ever catch yourself scrolling through the news and you think, hold on, haven't I seen this already?
Yeah.
It's like this weird deja vu.
Right.
Well, we're going deep on that today, diving into media consolidation, where it seems like fewer and fewer companies are calling the shots on more and more of what we watch and read.
It's a little like, think of your favorite diner, right? You go in one day and they're like, sorry, only one kind of coffee today.
Oh, no.
And it might be a decent cup, but what happened to all the choices, you know?
Exactly.
In media, that's like different perspectives, keeping things interesting, holding the powerful accountable. When you've got that variety, you can actually make up your own mind about things.
And that's why this deep dive is so important.
Yeah.
You shared some seriously interesting research with us. Think of it like our detective files for today, and we're unpacking all that. We'll be focusing on the Sinclair Broadcast Group, also just the wider trends in who owns what in the media landscape these days.
Right.
Get ready for things like must-run segments. Don't worry, it's not as scary as it sounds.
Right.
We'll get into it. We'll also talk about why your local newspaper might be shrinking, and even how those giant tech companies you use every day are part of this whole picture.
It's all connected, yeah.
It really is. So let's just jump right into it. Sinclair. This isn't some small-town operation. This is 185 TV stations, reaching a massive 40% of U.S. households. That's a lot of living rooms.
Yeah.
Sinclair has been on a buying spree, picking up local stations left and right. And, you know, on its own, maybe not a big deal.
Right.
But critics are saying, hold on a second. Their practices, how they do things, it could be impacting good journalism.
Well, yeah, when you get that centralized control over what's being said, that's something to watch out for. We know from history, propaganda machines, it's all about controlling the message to control what people think.
And that takes us to those must-run segments I mentioned. These aren't quick weather updates or traffic reports. We're talking pre-packaged segments, often with a very specific slant that local stations basically have to air. One that jumped out from the research was from 2020, a segment on COVID-19 that really pushed some questions about where the virus even came from.
It's kind of wild. You turn on your local news expecting, that local unbiased reporting, and then bam, there's this centrally decided segment just dropped right in. It makes it really blurry. Is this local? Is this national? Is this even objective? Hard to know if you're actually getting the full story and what's happening in your own backyard.
It's like you think you're getting one thing, and it turns out to be something else. And this leads us to the bigger picture of media ownership. It's way bigger than just Sinclair. We're talking massive corporations, Comcast, Xfinity, NBC, Universal, Disney, the whole empire, Warner Bros., Discovery. They are calling the shots across tons of media outlets, and they are not afraid to buy up even more. Remember when Discovery merged with Warner Media?
Yeah.
All part of this bigger trend.
Yeah, it's huge. This whole push towards, fewer owners, it really took off after that 1996 Telecommunications Act. They were trying to get more competition going, but kind of backfired because it actually let these media giants get even bigger.
It's like changing the rules of the game midway through and then handing out get-out-of-jail-free cards in Monopoly to the players who already own Boardwalk and Park Place.
Exactly.
And while this was happening, something else was going on. Local newspapers, the heart and soul of so many communities, they were starting to decline. Chains like Gannett, they own USA Today, but also hundreds of local papers. Same with Gatehouse Media, another big player. Lots of local newspapers under their umbrella.
Right.
But fewer companies controlling more outlets, that impacts how much variety you're getting in your local news.
And that's where the problem comes in. Fewer companies, fewer people, fewer locally focused newsrooms. And that can mean your community doesn't get covered as well.
It's like shrinking the spotlight.
Right.
And then comes the plot twist. As traditional media is dealing with all of this whole new breed of media powerhouse enters the scene. The tech giants.
Oh, yeah, they're not new to this whole media game at all.
Yeah.
They're controlling how we get information online, and they've got their hands on a ton of digital advertising. That's how a lot of those traditional news outlets stay afloat. They need that ad money.
They need to pay the bills.
Exactly.
And it's not just ads they're controlling. They're making content, too. Amazon, they jumped right in, bought the Washington Post back in 2013.
Right.
And now there's Amazon MGM Studios. They're making movies now.
Makes you wonder, who's paying for all this news anyway? And what do they want in return, right?
Right.
On the one hand, these tech companies, with all their money, maybe they can give those struggling newsrooms a boost, keep them alive.
Yeah.
But let's not forget, these companies, they've got their own goals, their own interests. Could be that influences the kind of news we see.
That's true. Sometimes money does the talking. It's not all bad news, though, in the digital world. We've got this rise of nonprofit digital newsrooms.
Right.
They're often funded by, it's kind of mixed, some tech money,
Mm-hmm.
private donations, and they're going deep on specific things,
Mm-hmm.
climate change, social justice, investigative reporting, the stuff that might not get as much attention in mainstream media.
And this is big. Shows there's a real hunger out there for news that dives deeper, more nuance beyond the headlines. But it always comes back to that influence question, doesn't it?
Yeah.
If your news organization is relying on a few rich donors to keep the lights on, gotta wonder how much freedom they really have to report what they find.
It's a tough balance,
Mm-hmm.
especially in this constantly shifting media world. So how does all this, Sinclair's must-runs, tech giants calling the shots, how does it actually hit home for you, the listener? Why should you care?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, right? In a democracy, a real one, you need those different voices, those different perspectives. When just a few powerful groups control what we see and hear, it's like an echo chamber in here. Opposing views get shut down, stories that need to be told, they get buried. It's like you're only hearing one side of the story, and that can really mess with how you see the big picture.
It's like going to a concert and only hearing one instrument the whole time. Like, you
Yeah.
might enjoy it, but you're missing the full orchestra.
Exactly. And that lack of variety, it has real-world impacts.
Yeah.
We start misunderstanding complicated problems. We can't hold the powerful accountable anymore, and we lose trust in the very institutions that should be working for us.
It's bigger than just agreeing or disagreeing with one news story. It's about whether we're even getting exposed to those different sides in the first place.
100%. Think of it like your diet. You wouldn't eat the same thing every single day.
Yeah.
You need that variety to be healthy, right? Same with information. We got to diversify that media diet, see what other perspectives are out there, be wary of anyone saying they've got the only truth.
Such a good point. Like reading different kinds of books, listening to different kinds of music. It's about opening yourself up to new ideas and questioning your own.
Exactly. And part of that is being a more conscious consumer of all this information.
Hey.
Think about what you're reading, what you're watching. Be aware that everyone has their biases and seek out those different sources to get the full story.
Great advice. It's not like the old days, right? We can't
Yeah.
just sit back and passively take in whatever's thrown at us.
Right.
Not with so much information out there. We've got to be active, think critically, question things, explore, challenge the information we come across. We need to figure out how to separate the good stuff from the, well, not so good stuff.
Yeah, and it's not about becoming cynical or thinking everything's a lie. It's about really thinking about the information you're getting, asking those questions, and looking for different perspectives so you can form your own informed opinion.
So where does that leave us? It feels like we're trying to find our way through this media world that just gets more and more complicated, more access to information than ever. But it was often coming through a smaller group of people, those gatekeepers we've been talking about.
Yeah, it's a real head-scratcher of our times. And it makes your role as an informed citizen, well, even more important. If you understand how media ownership works, you can be a smarter consumer of information and make choices that help create a media landscape that's lively, diverse, and ultimately, keeps everyone honest.
It's like that saying, if a tree falls in the forest and no one's there to hear it, did it even happen? Like if a really important story, it gets lost in all the noise, or worse, someone twists it to fit their own agenda. Are we really getting the full picture then?
That's the question we should all be asking, especially now, right? I mean, we are just bombarded with information constantly. And it's not just about the news we do see, it's also about the stories that don't get told, the voices that get drowned out, the perspectives that are missing from the conversation.
That's a really good point. It's easy to get so caught up in the constant stream of news, but we have to be aware of what we might be missing.
Right, exactly. Like with anything else, awareness is key.
Yeah.
Once you understand what's really going on behind the scenes, how ownership and funding can actually change what we see and read, you can start to be a smarter consumer of information.
So how do we actually do that? How can we be more discerning, especially when there's just so much information out there?
Think of it like you're a detective yourself.
Okay.
Don't just believe everything you see and hear, right? You got to question what you're reading, what you're watching. Look for those missing voices, those missing perspectives. Support good journalism, the organizations that are trying to give you the unbiased truth. And remember, there's always more than one side to every story.
That's a great way to put it. So it's not about being cynical or thinking everything's a lie. It's about really engaging with the information, thinking critically, actively looking for those different viewpoints.
Exactly. That's what makes this so important. Media consolidation, it's not just some abstract idea. It actually affects how we see the world, our communities, even ourselves.
That's so true. Well, it's been amazing unpacking all of this with you. We've looked at what shapes media ownership, the impact it can have, but most importantly, how you, the listener, can make sense of it all.
It's been a pleasure being here. And remember, knowledge is power. The more you know about how the media really works, the better choices you can make. And that makes for a more vibrant media, more diverse media, and ultimately, a healthier democracy for everyone.
Beautifully said. And on that note, we'll wrap up our deep dive into media consolidation. Hope you found it insightful, maybe even empowering. Until next time, stay curious, keep those questions coming, and thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.